Hi, this is Richard. We're doing an addendum to our topology video so that you can learn how to fix bad topology. We talked a little bit about what was good and what was bad, but I think it's important to also know how to fix it. And my friend specifically requested that I do this one, so I'm going to put a little bit of time into this and show you a few different ways to fix some bad topology. First, we're going to talk about using the knife tool by dissolving some edges, and then using the knife tool to draw in new vertices, adding in edge loops where we need it to smooth out the topology. And then we're going to talk about using subsurf, the modifier subsurf, and creases to fix bad topology. And then finally, we're going to talk about using retopology workflows. And I'm going to show you a new shader, the anisotropic shader, and I'm going to show you a new modifier, the Shrinkwrap modifier. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's delete this basic cube and put in everyone's favorite monkey, Suzanne. Now, Suzanne is a good example of bad topology. I hope I don't upset anybody by saying that. I know somebody actually had to make this, and it's very low poly, and there are some problems when you go too low poly. Because you see, this is called a pole, where more than 4 edges come together to create this shape here. This is 6, so it's a pretty bad one, and it's right in the middle of the face. It's going to cause some problems for shading. There's one back here too that we're going to talk about. That's what is that? 3. That's 5 edge pole. Look, there's a polygon back here that's bent. You can see this corner is going to poke through that side. So it's actually going to bend it like it's 2 triangles right here. It might as well be 2 triangles. You want to stay away from n-gons and triangles because it doesn't know how to shade those. And let me show you why. Here's a triangle right here to make that pole. So if we do Control R, right there, you see that loop doesn't go all the way around. It's not a closed loop. It's because there's a triangle on this side where you can't do edge loops through it. And there's a triangle right here. So that one's trying to go through and it can't. Tries to go through here and it can't, and here and it can't. How is light going to figure out which direction it should be shading from when you can't even do an edge loop through it? That's the problem with triangles and n-gons. And see, we have these loops, and then we have it going down through the face here. That's why we have this pole here, is because this loop could go down this direction, or it could go around this way continually and then down. It doesn't know specifically where to go, so you have a couple of different options for how to place that loop. And because you have 2 different loops coming together, here and here, it puts a pole in there when there doesn't really need to be. Poles and triangles, those are places where you're bringing loops together and ending them so that you can have fewer polygons. And there are reasons that you want those, but there are also reasons that it's a problem. So generally, Suzanne has good face topology. Here's the nose, bridge of the nose loop. Here's the eye loops. It's generally how it should be, but there's this big pole right in the middle. Let's go ahead and add material on here. And like I said, we're going to use the anisotropic. And let me show that to you real quick. Let's add some world lighting. And open. Here we go. Anisotropic shader is pretty much your metal shader. Glossy and diffuse will make a better flat metal. Anisotropic is for like a metal that has some streaking to it. And then this is just like a mirror, and then if we turn the roughness up 0.2, we've got like a brushed steel, and then like 0.6 would be like a nickel. So let's put this on 0.2, and then I'm gonna come over here. Let's go into object mode. I'm just gonna smooth shade that real quick. And you can see if you turn this up, it's going to stretch out this reflection of the light, and then rotation is going to rotate that around it. So you can get this effect where it comes from a point and it spreads out. We're going to use that to highlight the bad topology. Sorry, developer that made this. You can see the light coming together to this point right here. Look it up here on top of the eyes, how it's all wonky and weird. Right here, you see. In the ear, it's all going crazy. I'm gonna look back here at the top of the head. You can see right here there's a corner. And we don't actually see that. The light's showing it to us because it's trying to figure out how to smooth shade this so that it looks like it's rounded, but it can't because of all these triangles. There's another problem area here in the ear. There's a bunch of triangles right here, and it gets really crazy, not good. You can see it as well with the light and dark patterns, where it's trying to spread light across this evenly as if it were smooth, but it's just not smooth, and it's just not good topology. So, how do we fix it? First, we're going to add in some edge loops, and we're going to dissolve some edges, and then we're going to recreate them with better topology. And this can be very difficult. It's very time consuming. The best thing to do to fix your topology is to make it right the first time. A lot of times it's not worth the hours that it would take to fix a topology. It might take me an hour to fix all of Suzanne. It wouldn't be worth it. I could just build this model from scratch with correct topology in an hour. But anyway, let's add these in, and you can immediately see how the shading changes. Let's switch back. Already it's a lot better. See up here? The shading is already better because we added those edge loops in. It has a little bit more information to know how to spread out the light. But then we want to take care of this one here. So let's get rid of these edges here. Just dissolve edges. Let me turn that on real quick. And then we're going to use our knife tool by hitting K. We're just going to draw those in like that. And now you have a five-sided object, an n-gon, where you did have this pull. And you see this is a new problem. Whoops. Because while we can do edge loops, it doesn't go all the way through. So, how do we fix this? Well, we need one more, just right through here. And now we've divided it into quads. We could even slide this vertex up a little bit to give these a little bit more room and slide this one down. And that's also Shift V to slide vertices. Now we've got quad, quad, quad. And we added 4 more polygons. Well, did we? I don't know that we did. Let's add a new monkey in here. Looks like we just added 1 extra polygon in there. Right here, we divided this one in half to create those 4. So that's 2, 1 for each side. Extra polygons. I don't think that's too big of a cost. And now those quads, or those pulls where there was 1 right here, there's now 2. 1 here and here. There and there. And that's okay, that's where they're supposed to be. If you look at correct topology for a face, you don't have poles right in the center of the face. You have them here, where this loop goes around the head, or it goes around the eyes and then down the face. So that's okay. But now we have another problem. It comes back up around the back and then comes back down. That's not too big of a deal, so long as the loop is completed here on the face. That's what we need to worry about. And now let's look at it. Much nicer shading. It can spread out evenly. That's the whole point, that you want to fix your topology and have good topology. Especially when you go to put textures on this, the textures will look a whole lot better. Alright, now this other one. This one down here, this one's ugly. This is the last one I'm going to do. There's a lot of these places all over Suzanne. But look, we have this one here. Let's just hit X and let's take off that edge because that's causing a problem. So we have this loop which goes down now. See, it goes down around. And that might be okay, only we need to get rid of this one. So let's make this loop go around by doing this. And let's do an edge loop here so that we have a place to connect this. Right like that. Now you see I have a quad here, and then an edge loop here, and here. And then let's add one more edge loop. First, okay, let's take this one away. Because it gets crazy in here. There's now, what, 3, 6? That's a six-edged pull. It's definitely not going to be okay. There we go. Now I've got that going all the way around. Just put that there. And we're just going to connect it like this. And it can drive you crazy sometimes trying to figure out how to turn some of these things into quads by adding edge loops. And really, this is a place where a bunch of edge loops came to die, right in here. And it was a sacrifice that they made to keep this model low poly. But I don't know if it was the right one, because now we're only up to 1,000 polygons. Yeah, that might be a lot. Or no, we're not. That's edges. We're up to 500 polygons. So, I mean, that's not a lot by mobile standards even. Especially for a face, you can have thousands. And there we go. That's going to shade a lot nicer. And you can even deform this to make it a little more round. Where before it was pretty pinched. But now the light can flow around it, and you still see this is where the eye comes out, so that's perfectly okay. But you don't have a big gnarly mess there anymore where you once did. Shades a lot nicer right in here. And still going back around here, this quad's bent. You would want to take care of that by adding edge loop there so that the light can shine off of it more correctly. You can see a little bit how that's a bit better. But then, okay, we can go on and on and on. We can fix all this, try and get rid of that triangle by adding edge loops in here. The ear is going to be a mess. It's all kinds of messy. Let me show you another way to do it. So you have to kind of fix some of these really bad pulls first. Like you would have to come in here and do this, and you'd have to come back here and fix this one. It's not, this next method using the subsurface modifier, it's not going to fix your pulls. So it's going to leave one right here. It's just going to make it smaller. Right now this is a really big pull spreading out over, I don't know, 5% of the face. That's going to become a lot smaller and just be like 1% of the face when we add just a basic subdivision surface modifier. I went up here to the wrench, and then I chose add modifier, subdivision surface. And I'm going to click this little mesh here to apply the mesh to it. And you can see immediately, just with one level, how it evens out all of this. And what subdivision surface actually does is it takes your topology and it makes everything into quads. And I've seen how this goes crazy, makes crazy topologies because it's trying its best. Let's apply this. It's trying its best to turn your topology into quads everywhere. You see how there was a triangle here, now it's these 3 quads. That's what it does. It also smooths everything out. And now it turned this triangle that was left there into a quad that way. There's still going to be a little bit of issues in here because that's not great topology either. You could go in here and spread this out just a little bit. Try and fix it. Over here where we fixed it, it does look better. Remember, we didn't do it on this side, so that's a little gross. But over here where we fixed it, it looks a lot nicer. And you have nice edge loops going around the face that end back here where we didn't fix it. So, and you see you have this big nasty pull right here, where on this side we fixed it, and it's not there. But that instantly fixed a lot of the problems that we're having. The shading is all smooth. It's going to do a lot better now with animation, with shading, with applying a texture to it, and you pretty much increased your number of polygons by a power of 2. So we went from 500 to 2100. So there is a cost for using this, but it is a quick solution. And now let me use this model that my friend made and asked me to show specifically. I'm going to tab over, and you can see it was using the knife project to cut this out. And there's, look at this polygon here. It's not a quad because it has all of these other little faces going around this. And I want to point out that generally, if it's flat, if it's a static mesh, you don't have to worry too much about this. Yes, it's an n-gon, and if you smoothed it out, it might not shade properly, but why would you want to smooth this? It's one flat face. So don't smooth it, and it'll look fine. It's not going to deform, so it should be okay. You can have some weird n-gons and some weird polygons and some triangles on surfaces that are completely flat or have a slight gradual curve to them. Try not to have too many. It's best to work in quads just because it makes your life easier, but the tools that my friend used, put these in here. It's not worth going back and fixing this topology because there's so many edges in here it would get crazy. But if you wanted to go ahead and put a layer of subdivision surface to make it all quads, okay, let's go ahead and look at it. So now, doesn't that look awesome? It looks so much better. Oh my goodness. It's hideous now because that's what Bad Topology does. It doesn't know how to smooth this out correctly because the topology is kind of going crazy everywhere. How do we transform this into quads and make it better? Well, we've got to add creases. So we're going to select all of this and Shift E to add the crease, and then again on the inside. Shift E and drag out. You can see how it popped back in there. And then we've got to get these little corners. There we go, Shift E, drag it out. Now why is it still going over here? Well, look at this polygon right here. It's an L shape. It shouldn't be. So let's take the knife tool and let's just go from this corner to that corner. Now it doesn't do that. And I think this is a great example to see what happens with Bad Topology, because of the tools that he used, this topology is kind of crazy when you try to change it. And it might look perfect, but if you want to go back and modify things, it's going to get really crazy. Because of the Bad Topology. Whoops. We need to do edge, not vert. And that just highlights the difference in times that you're going to use edge, not vert, because I didn't want these faces selected. Shift E. It's looking better. We got to grab these in the corners. Whoops. And now you see another problem. This here is all one vert, or all one poly. So we'll have to come back and fix that here in just a minute. I'm just holding Alt to select whole curves. And because of the topology of this, you can't select all the way around something because it just doesn't know what you're trying to select. Whoops, inside the box. We gotta make sure we select that one little tiny guy right there. Get in there. All right. Shift E, and let's drag it out. We gotta go around. Oops. There we go. Oh, there's... Dang it. Nope, I did get it. There was this one here. Well, no, that's odd. Turn this off for a second, see what's going on there. Oh, that's just a little problem with the model itself. So let's just take that face off. Whoops. Should have selected that one. There we go. Fix that and turn this back on. There's an edge there, and there's one back there. There we go. Now, this is overlapping because it's bad topology right here. So, whoop, there we go. Let's just take the knife and go there. And because it's flat, it's okay that it doesn't do anything, go anywhere. Now, why is that still crossing over? That should have fixed that. Oops. Okay, I just wanted to delete that to see if it really was that one that was folding over. Looks like it might be well, where's that coming from? A good reason that you want to start with good topology in the first place. I don't know where this is coming from, that little flap there. You can see how these flaps are here. And then we just gotta cut these up. Cut, cut, cut. There we go. You see how those disappear as soon as I do it. And you got some weird ones down here as well. So this might be a little bit more of a pain. You're gonna have to come down here. And make these less of ingons, I guess you could say. Just not quite so ingony. Just so the computer can know how to subdivide this and crease it a little bit better. And the only reason that I'm doing this and not worrying so much is that all of this is flat. It's just going to be flat. Now you can see we have a much better result. There are a couple places that I can go in here and add some more creases, like here and over here. On these edges. And then we'll apply this let's do one of those real quick. All right. Oop. And you can see what it's going to do to our topography to get it all into quads. It's not pretty, and this also qualifies as bad topography. Look at this pole right here. I told you how it'll put everything into quads in any way possible. This is what it does, but now you have quads. So it's one of those cases where it's not really necessary. It's all flat faces, so the shading isn't really going to change across those faces. Flat is flat. But if you really wanted to, for some reason, now it's all in quads, come in here and take out some of these poles, add some edge loops in, and try to remove them. Some of these are going to be crazy because each of these little curves has to be at the beginning of its own quad, and then it has to start somewhere and it has to end somewhere. And that's how you get all these poles, because there's just not enough polygons to connect all these two. If you were going to do this yourself, let's remove that. Okay. If you were going to come in here and do this yourself, you'd have to come in here, and however many there are down here on the side, you'd add in edge loops, and then you'd connect them all this way. It's just not worth the time and effort. When this side's flat, it's going to shade fine. This side's curved. You can apply smooth just to this side if you want it to look smooth. This is all flat. It's not good topology, but it's not going to matter too very much that you fix it, because it's going to be a static mesh. So that was a subsurf and the crease. I wanted to show you specifically how to use the crease. And now we're going to go to a face, because face topology is made to be deformed. And the reason for this is because, let me turn that on. You want to use it in an animation. We're going to put all these loops in here so that when you change things, the loops themselves have a lot of room to push against other loops, and it's not going to deform the quad so much because you're working in loops. Most people, when they start out, they don't know how to build this, and they don't know anything about poles and connecting loops and things like that. And that's understandable. When I first tried to make a face, I made it out of quads, and they were going straight up and down and straight this way. Now, I pulled up some examples of bad face topology to show, but I don't want to show them. I don't want to embarrass anybody. That's somebody's work, and even if it's not great, you know, I'll just make my own bad topology. So let's pull this plane out here. Then I get to show you a really cool modifier as well. Let's make sure it's centered. And then let's rotate it on the X 90 degrees, and let's scale this puppy up. All right. Now, let's go in here and subdivide this, just to get a bunch of polygons. And then I'm going to point something out before I do this. Let's look at this face. This is with subsurf on. Let's take it down to 0. This is the original one that I modeled. It's very low poly, but because it has good topology, I was able to model this in low poly, low poly. This is only 300 polygons right now. And that might, actually that's probably including, no, that is just this object. 300 polygons for this face. That's very, very little, and it went pretty quickly to model this. And then I can just step up my subdivision surface, and it smooths it out correctly because I worked in loops. And I had good topology. And if I didn't, then it would be all kinds of weird, and you'd have all kinds of poles everywhere, and it wouldn't deform correctly. That's another big plus, is when you use these modifiers and other tools of Blender, it becomes a lot easier if you have good topology. So now let's bring this back, and we're going to add a modifier to it. We're going to add Shrinkwrap. Set the target to my face, and you see how it just blunk, sticks it on the face. You can change this mode to from nearest surface point to nearest vertex, and it's going to line up the vertices of these. But let's go into edit and let's put the mesh on it. What I want to do is project. And now watch, this is pretty cool. We're just going to, and then offset is how far off of your target this mesh is set. We can just adjust this gently until it looks right. All right, let's say there. Close enough, I guess, for a basic idea, because this is generally what their first face will look like. They'll go in here to mesh, and they'll take a UV sphere. And you can see how it looks a lot alike. They'll take this UV sphere, and they'll start pushing and pulling it into a face, and they'll end up with something like this, where you have a bunch of quads, sure, going this way, that way, and it generally looks like a face, and you have a nose pointing out, and a mouth area here, and eyes pushed in. And that's okay if you're going to take it and you're going to sculpt it. But it's not okay. Let me just tab into this here. It's not okay if you're going to animate it, and if you're going to add subdivision surface to it so that you can start making it look realistic and shading smooth like skin. There we go. Make those more like eyes. Okay. So there's our face. And then that's about, let me hide that puppy real quick. We can look at this correctly topologized one. Let's turn the views down to 0. I've got smooth shading on, and we're just going to look at this. You can see the lighting still doesn't really know how to move across it in some places, especially where I have those poles. But it's okay, it's not too bad. And you've definitely got some definition. 1, 2, now it's nice and smooth. Looks pretty realistic. I still have some more things I gotta tweak on it. This is just gonna be a base model to sculpt from. So, let's unhide this, and let's select it and put subdivision surface on it. 1, 2, and I'm going to smooth shade it. And now, yes, it looks okay, but look, even smooth shaded, like especially here on the nose, it doesn't shade right. Here on the lips, it doesn't shade right. It takes a keen eye to notice this, but you'll notice it a lot more when you animate. Like here, there's a bunch of light mustaches going across it this way and this way. You can really still see the polygons because it's not shading correctly. Let's apply that subdivision surface, and it just made everything smaller, so it didn't really fix any of our problems. Just made them smaller. And then especially if you go to change this, you're still, everything's a square. You don't have any good loops. Your loops go from all the way around in each place. It doesn't go around where they would actually go around to the human face. So you're going to end up with these weird corners when you deform, and then it's going to put a weird corner here around the mouth. It's just not going to work great for animating. It doesn't look right because it's not right. It's not how humans work. You want to build things generally how they are in the real world. The shading doesn't look right. The animating isn't going to look right. So this would be okay if you're going to sculpt it, because what would you do after you sculpted it? You would retopologize. So let's go ahead and turn our subdivision surface back on. And let's apply it. So if you have bad topology, here's what you can do. I recommend applying a level or two of subdivision surface first, like I just did. And then let's add a new object. It's going to be a plane, and we're just going to tab into edit mode and delete all the vertices. Because what we're going to do is we're going to turn on snap to base closest. Then we can hold control. If we're on vert mode, we're going to hold control. We can draw a new topology. Turn off our transform tool on top of this. And I wanted to show you this with a face because this is called retopologizing. It's actually a part of a lot of people's workflow. They do it because they'll take a really high polygon face, like this one back here, and they'll sculpt it, and they'll sculpt details in like wrinkles and crevices and the pockmarks on your skin and moles and things, and make it really, really high poly, millions and millions of polygons. And then if they want to use it for something, they can bake that into a normal map that will make it look like it's that many polygons, but then they retopologize this way to make a lower polygon model to put that over. And then from here you can just continue. And for each vert that you have down here, make sure you add one as well until you get to a pole and you want to change directions. And it just takes a little bit of knowledge about what you're making to know where to put your poles. And the reason that we turned on snap is that it then puts these vertices directly on the thing that I modeled before. Whoops. If you hit Shift F, it's going to fly the camera around. So now we're getting a better topology pretty simply without having to remake the whole shape that we liked, just by doing some basic retopologizing. I don't know if retopologize is a word, it is now. And then you would just work outward from there. And you could even mirror this. So we'll go into modifier, mirror. Well, you'd have to have it mirrored correctly, but if you can get it mirrored correctly, it would lay over that. There we go. So then when you work, you don't have to do it on both sides either, if what you're doing is symmetrical. See, now we're ready to start forming the brow. And I'm not going to do all of this because I think you get the idea. But that's another way to fix bad topology. So I've given you 3 ways now to fix bad topology. We talked about first just going in and adding new edge loops, and then adding in more quads in places where there are poles, so you can get rid of some triangles and some of those acute angles. And then we talked about using subdivision surface and then creases to maintain the shape, while using subdivision surface as kind of a cheat way to turn everything into quads, and that does add a ton more polygons. And then lastly, we talked about doing what I'm doing here, retopologizing. And this is a way to just, whoops, turn on clipping. This is the way to take bad topology that's really, really bad and make it quickly and easily so that you have better topology without having to reform the whole shape of the object. So I hope you learned something. I hope this was helpful to you. And before I go, I want to point out that, look, right here, this would be a big quad. We need the nose to go up and over the head. So this would be where you could put a pole. And it's going to take a little bit of experience, see right there. Now you can see there's a pole right there, where we're going to have the nose coming down, but the circle of the eye stops, and then the brow comes across. It delineates between the nose ridge, the brow, and the eye socket. And that's where you want to use poles. And you might have another one right here, and you might have another one right here to go onto the cheek plane. And then here it takes the nose down, and then this would be the side of the nose. And it just takes a little bit of experience to know where to put those. So that's all that we're going to be doing today. I hope this was helpful, and it adds on to the content of the previous topology video. If you have any other questions, put them in the comments. I'll answer your questions. We can talk about any of this. If you know of any other ways to fix this stuff, let us know as well. It's shared knowledge. We're working together to get better at this wonderful program. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.